Whoa. I don't know if you heard that. There's thunder all around. I love MagMod. I've been so proud to be a MagMod ambassador now for I think 6 or 7 years, and I literally couldn't make the images I do without using MagMod modifiers. So when MagMod asked me to do a video for their YouTube channel, again, this is the second time they've asked me, I was over the moon and wanted to do, obviously, the best job that I could. So I thought, oh, it'll be really cool to make a video all about how to take Brenizer Method portraits, because I did one recently for my own YouTube channel and it's done crazy well, the best performing video I've ever had on my channel. So I thought, oh, let's do another one for MagMod, but we'll make it even better. So I met up with my friend Jade yesterday, and this was what we were greeted with when we first arrived at the location. Beautiful blue skies. Oh, it's going to be amazing. But yet, half an hour later, this is what we were faced with. And I feel so bad for Jade because she was incredible on that shoot, but I just couldn't get across in that video the information I wanted to, because we were only there for like half an hour, 40 minutes. I basically did my intro, took 2 or 3 shots, 2 or 3 Brenizer Method shots, and that was that. The heavens opened and I've never got so wet whilst out shooting. So 24 hours later, I am back at some more woods, and I'm going to try again. So I will show some of the images that I took from last night's shoot in this video later on, but I want to do as good a job as I could for MagMod, and that is why I'm doing this video all over again. And as this is the MagMod channel, I'm going to do a little brief introduction. So as I say, my name is Neil Redfern and I am a wedding photographer based in the UK. As well as shooting weddings for the past 12, 15 years now, I've offered various types of wedding photography education, be it workshops, my Patreon, and more recently with my partner in crime and very, very talented wedding photographer Hel Williams, we have set up Flashmasters. And finally, before we get into this video proper, I just want to say again a huge thank you to MagMod, not just for inviting me to make this video for them, but also for having me as their ambassador now for such a long time. It's an honour to represent MagMod. I love their products and I love using them. Okay, let's have a bit of a sit down. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create Brenizer Method portraits. If you're not familiar with Brenizer Method portraits, then I think you're going to be really excited by them. This is not a new technique. This has been around for a long time now, but it's only very recently that I've started doing them. And I absolutely love the effect. I think it's amazing. Also, should just say, as you may have guessed, as the name suggests, the Brenizer Method was made popular by Ryan Brenizer. It's not a new technique as such. This is something called Bokeh Panoramas. However, it was Ryan who brought it to the masses, in particular wedding photographers. So a massive thank you to Ryan. He's an amazing photographer, and go and check him out. I'll put his website on the screen now. So yeah, the Brenizer Method. What is the Brenizer Method? Well, basically it's a form of stitching together lots of different photographs to create this huge landscape type photograph that actually couldn't exist with just one single shot, because the lens that it would need to be taken on doesn't exist. Because when we stitch all these images together, the look, when done, as I'm going to show you in this video, creates this sort of otherworldly effect that would look like it's been taken on a really wide aperture, something like f/0.5 or something like that. So it's impossible to get these shots in just one exposure. So as I say, this is all about getting a base image and then taking lots of shots around that base image and then stitching them all together. And the effect it gives, in my opinion, is really, really striking, and I love it. Oh, also should just say, you may be curious about how you actually edit these images. So at the end of this video, I'm going to show you in Lightroom how you bring together all these images and stitch them together. And it's actually a lot easier than you probably think it is. So stick around to the end of the video. So before we get into the shooting and I meet up with tonight's model, I'm going to give you 5 tips for making really cool Brenizer Method portraits. Now, the first thing you want to be aware of is that you need to stay very still. So throughout taking all these photographs, your camera will be moving slightly to the side like this, as you'll see me doing. However, you don't want to move. The more that you can stay still, the better, or rather the easier it will be for Lightroom to stitch together all these images. So rule 1 is to stay still. Okay, rule 2, very similar to the first, you want the scene that you're photographing to also be very, very still. This, again, remember, is about stitching together lots of images to create one whole image. So if there's things moving around that image, Lightroom isn't going to be able to stitch them together. If it's not still, then Lightroom will struggle. Next up, I'm going to suggest that you always shoot these on a long focal length, ideally at least 85mm. The longer the focal length, the more this effect will become apparent. So in tonight's shoot, I'll be using a combination of an 85mm 1.4 and a 105mm 1.4, so a long focal length. You also want to shoot on as wide an aperture as you can, because remember, this is about creating a look that looks like it's been taken on a crazy wide aperture. So to really exaggerate that look, we want to use a prime lens wide open. So as I say, I'm going to be using an 85 1.4 and a 105.1.4 tonight, and I will be shooting every single image, every single frame tonight at 1.4. Number 5, and this is a very, very important one, when you start taking these shots from the first shot to the last one, you want to use exactly the same settings. So at no point do you change any of your camera settings once you start the process of taking these images. So what I will be doing, I will be putting my aperture at 1.4, I'll be trying to underexpose the scene, because this is MagMod after all. I will be taking tonight's shots with off-camera flash. So 1.4 is going to be the starting point for me, and then I'm just going to underexpose the scene. So that's probably going to involve a very, very fast shutter speed in tonight's environment, because obviously it's lovely weather, we've got bright sun, and I'm going to probably use a very low ISO. But the point is, once you get that first exposure dialed in, you do not change your camera settings. And lastly, I mean, I said it was 5 points, this is actually number 6, but 5 sounds better, so let's just forget it. This is point 6. But you want to focus on your subject, whether that's a couple, a model, whoever it may be that you're photographing. That will be the first part of the jigsaw. That is the first frame. So you're going to focus on your subject. After that, you do not change your focus again. So what I will do, I use back button focus, and you'll see me doing this in the video. I'm going to lock my focus onto Meg, who's at tonight's model, and then I'm going to just keep on shooting using the shutter button. Now my shutter button does not change my focus. I've got my camera up for back button focus, so only the back button, surprise, surprise, focuses. My trigger finger, which is on the shutter button, does not focus. I don't have half press, full press. That literally just takes an exposure. So I'm going to lock my focus onto Meg, and once I've got that focus throughout the whole process, I do not change my focus. When I made the video for my own channel about how to create Brenizer Method portraits, I had a couple of questions that kept coming up time and time again. So I thought, oh, actually, it's almost good to make a response video, which is what this is, about my answers to those questions. 1 second, got to just hurdle this. The first was, why am I not using a tripod for this? And it's a very good question, because strictly speaking, these shots should be taken with a tripod. My answer to that though, I just don't like tripods. For me, tripods just slow me down. It's my wedding photography background. I'm just used to working very, very quickly. So I'm not saying it's the right thing to not use a tripod. Probably is not the right thing to do, but you can get really good results just handheld. You just need to remember to be still. So that is my reasons for not using a tripod. I'm a naughty, naughty boy. And the other question, which I've asked an awful lot, and again, it's a very good question, is how do I remove either the light stand, or if it's Helen that's helping me, how do I remove Helen from the first frame? Because when we're using off-camera flash, that flash will be in the full image. So how do we remove that? But I'll answer that question when we're in Lightroom at the end of this video, but it's very, very simple. Yeah, stay tuned. Okay, so we have 2 new people. First of all, Helen, thank you so much for coming to help me with this shoot. And Meg, thank you so much for doing this. Literally only met Meg 20 minutes ago. In fact, only messaged today. Yeah. So because of yesterday's shoot, again, it was such a shame how the rain just came out of nowhere. I was struggling to find someone for today, but Meg came to my rescue. So thank you so much. What I'm looking for here is Meg to be backlit by the sun, and it's going to light up all this foreground. And Meg would usually be, obviously, in that situation underexposed, but we've got a MagMod Beauty Dish. In fact, let me just show you this. So this is the MagMod Beauty Dish. on a C stand. It's going to create really beautiful light on Meg, and in there we have a Godox AD200. So as I always would suggest, the first photograph I'm going to take is going to be just natural light, and what I'm looking to do is just underexpose this scene. So ignore these. Yeah, that looks nice. So I'm at f1.4, that's important for the Brenizer method. As I mentioned, long focal length. This is my Sigma 105 1.4 lens. So I'm putting this at 1.4. The ISO I know is going to be really low because I'm trying to kill the ambient light, except for the highlighty bits. So that's where the shutter speed will come in. Yeah, that looks really nice. Now we turn our speed light on. I'm not going to change any of my settings, just going to see what the speed light itself does. Again, just a test, Meg. Perfect. That looks really nice. Okay, so again, my first shot is going to be Meg in her entirety, filling the frame. So I'll take 3 or 4 of you here, Meg. Gorgeous. And then just looking straight at me, if that's all right. So I'm taking a few different shots of Meg here, just to give myself some options. Actually just to lift your hand up against your chin, if that's nice. Yeah, really nice. And just looking that way as you're doing that. Perfect. Okay, Meg, actually you should stay still. Now I'm going to shoot around Meg. I'm doing a few of these. It's going to be very similar to the first shot, but I'm just giving myself more chance of making sure that I've got one that really works. In fact, let's go portrait for these. And again, I'm trying to fill the frame with Meg. Okay, if you can just face that way with your body even more, if that's all right. Then with your right hand, if you can just lift that up to you, and then just looking back at the light. Yeah, really nice. Okay, and just staying still for me, please. Smashing these, Meg, thank you. It's funny, my instinct when I'm shooting is always to want to get low, and that would actually make a really nice one-off photograph. The problem with the Brenizer method is you want to try and create depth, and I find that if I'm just shooting low and the foreground is just bokeh, it doesn't really give you that depth. In fact, this photograph that I took last night with Jade, this was taken with off-camera flash, so all the light you see in this shot is generated by a speed light that was behind Jade, as you'll see here. Doesn't really give that much depth because I wasn't really considering the fact that if you just fill in the frame with bokeh, then you've not really got the depth. So I'm purposely here shooting a bit higher so we see more of the floor. Okay, Meg, if you can just now just do it as you were before, sort of playing with your hair on the other side, if that's okay. That's it, and looking towards your hand as you do that, like down. That's really good, really nice. And now we move around. Perfect, Meg, thank you. So, 1, 2. Try and just look at little objects on the floor that I use as like reference points. Meg, that was amazing, thank you. For the last shot of tonight, I wanted to try and find a leading line. Obviously, we're in the middle of a forest at the moment, so it's not that easy to do that. However, this path here, I think will provide that. So I've asked Meg to stand in the middle of the path here. We're using nature's weight here to hold the MagMod Beauty Dish in place. Actually, I might just have to do one tiny step back, please, Meg, if that's okay. Perfect. I've realised what I've not done in practice, I spoke about it earlier in the video, is show you exactly how I'm using back button focus. So again, my settings, 200 my shutter speed, f1.4, ISO 200. The speed light, the AD200, which is in the MagMod Beauty Dish, is on 128 power at the moment, and I'm using back button focus. So this button here is how I focus. If you Helen can zoom in a little bit, you'll see that when I press the back button, it focuses. And then if I try and focus with this, I can't. So only this button is focusing. So what I'm doing is focusing right on Meg like that. Stunning. Just looking up towards the light, please, Meg. Really nice. Perfect. Now I do not press that button again. I'm just shooting around Meg. So let's just do that again. 1, 2, 3. Do the other side. Huge thank you to Meg. I say, I didn't even know Meg 2 or 3 hours ago, and here we are in a secluded forest taking photographs. Meg, you've been amazing, thank you. And again, massive thank you to Helen for also being integral. Very important I say this in every video. Helen is not my licensed assistant. She is an incredible wedding photographer. She's a MagMod ambassador. She co-founded Flashmasters. She just does this on the side. She doesn't get paid for it either. So yeah, what I'm now going to do is pass you over to me in Lightroom, where you're going to see me editing one of these Brenizer Method photographs. Boom! Thank you, Meg, thank you so much. Okay, so let me now show you how to edit Brenizer Method portraits in Lightroom, and I promise you it's really simple. So here we have all the images along the bottom here that I'm going to use to create this particular Brenizer Method portrait. I've chosen one photograph here, as you can see, of Meg, and all these are the different pieces, the different bits of the jigsaw, if you like, that I'm going to use to make up the panorama. Now, I will say I definitely overshoot when I'm making Brenizer Method portraits because I'm just always scared of missing parts of it. So I do overshoot. I think with more practice, then I'll end up shooting less. But for now, I'm always like, oh, let's just take a few more just to be certain that we've got all the bits. So there are a lot of images in here. There's 20 that are going to be making up this panorama. Oh, just to point out as well, I have not done anything to these images at all. You can see they're literally just brought into Lightroom. I've not made any changes to them at all. So let's select all the images again. So I have selected 20 images. And now what we do, we go to Photo, Photo Merge, and Panorama. Lightroom will then do its thing. Now, I've already made this panorama before, so it made this very, very quickly. But do expect Lightroom to take its time doing this, especially if you have taken a lot of images into the panorama. I don't change anything else. I'm going to keep it as spherical. I don't change anything here, and I just click merge. You can see here as well that there are parts that I've missed, but for the landscape photograph that I was getting, all the parts are there, more or less. But I will show you in a second what to do if you do miss any areas of the panorama. This again just takes a few seconds just while Lightroom's doing its thing. Again, the more images that you're including, the longer the processing time. It will also obviously depend on the speed of your computer as well. And here it is. Yeah, I'm really pleased with this one. So the first thing that I will do is just crop in. So I'm going to click on the crop tool. I'm going to go to a 16:9 ratio, and I will just crop in so that I've got all the elements, something like that. Now, what I'm going to do in this particular example is pretend that I wanted to do this, because I just want to show you what I will do and have done in this video if there is an element of the photograph missing, i.e. this top left area here. So I'm going to make that my
composition, and then I'll just edit this as I would any other image. But I want to show you in particular how to remove this light stand, because as you saw in the video, I was using a static C stand in this shoot with Meg, so it was always in the frame. I'll be honest, there is no magic answer to this, no clever answer. I'm just going to use generative fill, but it will work really, really well. But what I will show you in a second is how we can remove the light source if you're using off-camera flash with the Brenizer Method portrait without using generative fill. It is possible. I'll show you that in a second. But for now, let's just go over to the remove tool. We've got generative AI selected. So let's just go round the beauty dish. You can see I did hide it behind these trees, so there's not much of it to actually get rid of. And then we just click remove. Again, this will take a little bit of time because we are talking huge files here. Just depends how fast your computer is. And there we go. We have 3 different options. They're all pretty decent. I found that generative fill in Lightroom has got so much better recently with the recent updates. And yeah, I don't think you could ever tell it was there. We can go in really close. It's crazy good. I'm not going to go through the whole editing of this, but what I do want to show you very quickly is how I would get rid of this. Now, I wouldn't use generative fill in Lightroom to get rid of this because I don't find Lightroom is great for bigger areas like we've got here. So what I'm going to do instead is open this in Photoshop. So let's go to the image, edit in, and then edit in Photoshop. Okay, so we're in Photoshop. I'm just going to draw around that area, right click, generative fill. I'm not going to type anything in there, just going to click on generate. Yeah, for me, Photoshop is still the king when it comes to removing things, removing distractions and generative fill. Say Lightroom is loads better than it used to be, but Photoshop is still, in my opinion, better. As you can see there, that's done an amazing job. Even if we're going really close, it's virtually impossible to see any sort of join. And that is how I would do that. So we're going to now take this back into Lightroom. And here we are back in Lightroom with the final image. I say it is huge. This as well. That's the other advantage of Brenizer Method portraits I've not even spoken about. They are huge files. So you can print these massive. You look at the detail there, but look how much was zoomed in. It's incredible. Obviously, I've not applied any actual editing to this as yet, but here is the final version. And what I'm going to do now is show you how it is possible to use off-camera flash and Brenizer Method portraits, have your light source in the frame, but not need to use generative fill to remove it. And here is the example. So this is the shoot that I did with Darcy earlier this year. Look how much I had overshot for this one. This would be big enough to print out and put on the side of a skyscraper. It's huge. This was the first time I'd done it, so I was really overshooting. But what I wanted to show you is if we look at the actual photograph of Darcy that I have used, we can very clearly see the light source and Helen in that photograph. However, Helen and the light source are not in the final panorama that Lightroom has made. So I've not, again, applied anything to this. I've not used generative fill. So how has that happened? And it is because once I had got the base layer shot of Darcy, I asked Helen to leave the scene and then I shot in the area where Helen would have been. And I think if we look at our jigsaw piece images down here and we look at this image, that is the area that Helen was stood. And that is the area that when Lightroom has stitched them together, it is used to replace Helen. So if you do have a light source and you remove it after you've got your base layer of the couple or the subject that you're shooting, and then you shoot that same area again, Lightroom can be very clever and use the second version, the part where the light source was not in there, in the end panorama. So you don't even need to use generative fill, which is really cool to know. Doesn't always work, but it definitely did in this case, you can see. So I'm going to try and do that more in the future. So again, I want to say a huge thank you to MagMod for inviting me to their YouTube channel to make this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'll try and keep an eye on the comments as they come through. And I also want to say again, a huge thank you to Helen, to Jade and to Meg for being incredible. This whole video was definitely a team effort and I'm very grateful for all of their help. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you next time.
The last one. Perfect, thank you. Right, I think we need to sort ourselves out. Jade, Helen,
Thank you.